Hi, everyone. Welcome to Silly and Trillion.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Today we have Katrina Symonds, who I have personally been stalking and forced her to be my Instagram friend. And now we're meeting in real life. I read her incredible story on Substack. And I literally made sure to stalk my friends that knew you so I could get an introduction and I could talk to you because I thought it was so heartfelt and it's such an important conversation. And I'm truly so honored that you are choosing my platform to also tell your story and hopefully, change the lives of other people that might be going through this and will go through this and hopefully make it easier for them than it was for you.
I hope so.
Anyway, shape or form, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it took me a while to share the full story on Substack. And that's because, I was still processing and I still am, to be honest, trying to make sense of everything that happened.
Yeah.
It's a long journey. It continues. And I'm grateful that people did read it. The goal is, my husband jokes that I have like a hotline in the house for people that do IVF because so many people reach out to me and I'm very grateful for it. And I'm happy to give advice wherever. And it's crazy that I give the advice because I'm still here. I'm still in it, right? But, we'll get there. And I kind of got to this point where I'm like, I'm not a social worker. Yeah. I don't have a therapy degree. I don't know if I have the tools to help people, but if I can by sharing my experience, then, that's what I've been given. And I don't necessarily believe that everything happens for a reason, but I do believe that if you're missing the lesson, what's the point, right? Yeah. That's kind of why I put it out there.
So where does your journey start when it comes to conceiving?
So
the first time you had sex? No, I'm joking.
I did grow up thinking every time I had sex that I was going to get pregnant. I have a memory of my best friend, in Sydney. I don't know how old I was, but I remember, I had sex, and then the next day we got, a pregnancy test, and she went outside the bathroom. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be pregnant. And I remember she went outside the bathroom and I was like, give me space. And I peed on the stick and she didn't give me space, by the way. She was like,
I just need to know.
Yeah. And I was like, well, believe it or not, the night after I had sex, I wasn't pregnant, but
shocking.
Did grow up thinking that that's how it happened. So
same. I'm from Peru and we're very Catholic where I come from. So it was like, get away, your sperm is to be a block away from me. I will get pregnant. Mary, I will
look at me.
No, things
so yes, I always thought it was going to be this easy thing. And I got married in the end of 2019. We started trying right away. I remember the night of our wedding, let's see. Started tracking all of that. And I would say mid 2020, nothing was happening. I think I talked to a doctor. They were like, give it a few more months, see if you can conceive.
Because you were young.
Yes, I was 32. I've been doing this for a while. I don't know how old.
Yeah, that's very young.
Yes, very young. And I went to, eventually, I talked to a fertility doctor. We looked at my uterus, my ovaries, and everything was very healthy. So it was kind of quote, unexplained infertility. I will say that their advice at the time was let's get straight into it. And I would say I naively was great, in 2 months I'll be pregnant. Let's just, we don't know why this is happening. It could be something, on the male side, on the female side, there's nothing identifiable here. Mm-hmm. But, you're a great candidate. This is going to be that with IVF. And the truth is, for some people, it is like that, right? And I think because of that, there's this idea of IVF as this one-stop shop and solve for some people. And I think the experiences you hear about when it works. I don't know if you hear about when it doesn't work.
I don't think you do because you feel like a failure because you feel like it's your fault.
Yeah. And also it's not like the IVF clinics are going to be sharing that data. So there's no real regulation.
And no one is going to post on Instagram, oh my God, look, I did another round that didn't work. Yeah. I feel like now it's starting to become a little bit more acceptable to do that.
Exactly.
But no one really has.
No one has. And it's very isolating. So started IVF in 2020. I guess I did a retrieval, and even though I had lots of eggs, testing came back, didn't have a lot. I was encouraged to, in order to make, quote, one healthy pregnancy, I needed at least 4 embryos. So they sent me back to do another round, did a transfer. It didn't work. It was devastating, felt like, a huge loss.
it's just so crazy to me that like, because I did one round and then I asked the doctor at the end, I was like, what should I do? He's like, well, we need to do 2 more.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is insane. I'm like, you're asking me to like double the money and I'm also just supposed to blankly just give you the money. You're not telling me what we're going to do different.
No, that's absolutely it. And I don't think like, I think there's great doctors out there, but I also think there's this formula that people use and they use it on everyone.
Yeah.
And there's probably not that much, in my experience, curiosity around what you can change and tweak, and everybody is different.
Yeah.
And I think the method is like, we're trying to get eggs out, but at the same time, like, they're just kind of repeating, and like the definition of insanity is to repeat the same thing, right? And expect a different outcome. Sometimes, the cycle does change, but yeah. So went into 2, did a transfer. That didn't work. I was devastated. That was transfer 1. I've since done, I believe, 10 transfers. In 2022 I think it was only my 3rd transfer then.
Okay.
So I had done 1 transfer in 2020. We did a whole lot of testing. I had a miscarriage in 2021 around Christmas. Mm-hmm. Christmas will always be this theme for me because, like, I've always at Christmas been like, I'm going to have my child.
And it's like your I don't know.
Yeah, I know. We put meaning. I also think in life we put meaning around everything. Like, if Christmas is this, it's meaning. I didn't grow up with Christmas, but just this idea of like,
something to celebrate.
Bookend of the year. So in 2022, I went into my 3rd transfer. And it was successful. Mm-hmm. I got pregnant, and that was my daughter. I got pregnant. I wouldn't say it felt easy. I would say that it felt, Bichette, like meant to be. I felt deeply, deeply connected to her. I think that I had a hard pregnancy in the sense of like, I literally had morning sickness my entire pregnancy, and like, learned to master all sorts of things, like literally like projectile vomiting on the freeway, making it to my office, changing my shirt because I had spew on me, peeing at the same time. I don't know. And I'm oversharing, but
No, I mean,
but I was grateful for all of it.
Yeah, because I was like, it was proof that you're actually pregnant too, right?
And
like,
I was like, I win. I felt like I'd won.
Yeah.
That was my daughter. And, for all intents and purposes, I did have a healthy pregnancy. She was PG tested. So I had this confidence that, everything was okay, because that's what they tell you in IVF. You know, like there are so many people I know that test their embryos, and that is great if that's your choice. But I don't think it's it's not foolproof. And I didn't understand that. And I wasn't ever told that. I have very like vivid memories of even asking at like 12 weeks, should I get this test? And I'm like, you can, but like your daughter's tested already. So like, you don't really need to. Like, there was just this consensus that like everything was good. I got scans every week till 13 weeks because I was quote high risk. I was at that point 35. So I was already geriatric at 35. So I got scans every week. I found a doctor that I thought I really liked based on whatever decisions and criteria I felt, my OBGYN, because I was going to a new person. I live on the east side of LA, and I wanted something closer because all my fertility treatments, always took me like an hour and 10 minutes to get to. And
we're on the west side.
Yeah. So I picked someone on the east side. They could start seeing me at 13 weeks. I went in, all of that stuff that's normal. I saw a high risk OB too, because they're like, because you did IVF, because you are 35, and, everything kind of went along status quo, if you will. At 20 weeks, I did a full scan and everything was good.
That's the big one too.
That's
the 20-week one is the big one. That's when they do the 3D scan and the whole
They did everything. Everything. Yeah, we were there. It was amazing. Took photos of I even remember making this joke. I've got really flat feet. And like, that's a family thing. Flat feet, can't dance, all of that stuff. And I remember seeing her right foot and making this joke that she had high arches, and that, so she looked after her dad. And like, because I'm left-handed, I was like, she's right-handed, she's right dominant, she's got a great arch, she's going to, get straight into dancing, blah, blah, blah. So I remember thinking that at the 20-week scan. And, they did notice, the only thing they noticed is she had this thing called a double umbilical. Mm-hmm. And what that means is, and apparently it's very common in IVF, it's 1%, which sounds low, but I come to learn that 1% is actually high after you've been through what I've been through. And it just means that sorry, it's called a single umbilical artery. And what that means is the umbilical cord has arteries inside it that are what, bring the nutrients through.
Yeah.
And a lot of times with IVF, for whatever reason, there's one less artery. And it can kind of affect growth and stuff, but it's just something that's monitored later on. And it's not really, if it's not paired with anything else, it's not really like a red flag.
To be concerned about.
Yeah. And I did say at the end of that appointment, like, do you see any red flags? And I remember my doctor quote, like, I see no red flags. Come back in 4 weeks, for an updated test at the end of 23 weeks, which is standard, and like all is well. So we left. I obviously Googled the shit out of that, but like, there was no reason to be concerned.
Well, also because you've done everything right.
Yeah.
The embryo was like, they tested everything.
And
you've been being tested up to this point. What do you ever think?
And she actually, I will also say at that point is when they offer you the like, do you want an amnio? We have to offer it. And I said, do you think I need one? And they said, no, because you have a tested embryo, like, and there's risk with that too. So that's why we elected not to do that then. At the end of 23 weeks, we went back. I remember it was a Friday afternoon. It was really hot. I remember taking a photo beforehand in my mirror and like making this joke that now is just haunting 20. And I was like 23 and me because, I was holding her. Obvious stuff. I was going for that test that day and just, I was really excited. I mean, I loved being pregnant. Like, I was so proud of her and me. And my husband had been very afraid because we'd been through what we thought was so much already, but he was finally, like embracing all of that. So I remember I took that photo and we went to the test. I even remember walking through the waiting room, seeing people and feeling almost smug because I was like, I'm here,
I didn't.
Yeah. And we went in and it was an otherwise felt like a normal test, going through everything, oohing and ahhing and all of that shit. And then she was done with the test and she looked at us and said, I noticed something with your daughter's right hand, which the irony is, I just said, like, she's right dominant, all this, I don't know what we know as humans, honestly. But she said, there's something with her right hand. I'm very concerned. You, in California, have a limited time to terminate should you want to. And I'm going to advise you go to a high-risk doctor and get this checked out because I'm not sure what's going on. And a few things crossed my mind. One was, why the fuck would I quote terminate?
Would it for a hand thing?
No, obviously not. I mean, so I was like, why? First of all, why would you say that? Apparently, legally, she had to. And then I thought, aren't you a high-risk doctor? What do you mean I need to go see a high-risk doctor? That was very confusing to me.
Yeah. She didn't explain any further.
Nothing.
That was the extent of the interaction.
Nothing. And she left the room and I looked at my husband and it was just like, what's happening? That was it. It was just, and she was like, well, now that there's something going on with her hand and there's something going on with her umbilical cord, we have a red flag and I need you to see a different doctor. And we sat in the room and I guess I went insane in that moment. I'm not sure. I feel like I'm the kind of person, ever since I was younger, even when stupid things, like if I had a crush on a guy and sent him a text, I get like really hot immediately, like, oh.
And flustered.
And I just remember being in that room and feeling that heat of like, I had no idea what was going on and what this meant and what she was saying to me.
It's also scary, the fact that you're at a doctor's office and they're not giving you information and they're leaving you with more doubts and questions and they're just living out there to basically figure out for fence for yourself. Yeah. You're literally at the place where you're supposed to be taken care of. You're literally at a doctor's office. That is their job, is fucking take care of you. Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly, until that point, and honestly, maybe not even at that point, maybe it was later, I just didn't realize that, like, you become the liability to them and you are not protected. Like, I think that there's this thing where, like, if you're the common denominator in a doctor's office and fit, like, I don't know, like the status quo, then you're looked after. But if there's something going on, I think that there's fear around that. So for us, I remember we were there. They came in, they gave us a pamphlet, like a brochure for a children's hospital, and said, this is who we think you should see. This is an expert.
An X-ray fucking what? They haven't even told you what she had. They just told her something was wrong with her hand. It's insane.
They said he's an expert at, like, you know, scans, high-res scans of bodies, and I don't know.
Yeah.
This is who you need to see, and we'll call you later. What I can tell you is they didn't call us later ever. There was no later. I got in the car. Zach got in the car. That's my husband. And we just spiraled. I just remember I went into complete survival mode. And this is like where motherhood comes in. Like, what I do understand is that if your child needs something, your ego doesn't matter, right?
Yep.
Your how you're perceived by other people doesn't matter. You're going to do everything you can for your child, or high water, period.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was just like, I quickly found out I couldn't just get into the children's hospital, right? Like that, you don't just turn up. It's a program. You need to get approved. They need to check all the insurance shit, all of that. There's priorities. You know, no one knows what's going on.
Previous doctor is not helping with this.
No.
They was just a brochure.
They sent like a scan, but we never talked to them again.
Yeah, but they didn't facilitate
there was
getting
no
an appointment.
There was no advocacy at all.
Okay.
So I just start, calling the hospital on repeat. I use the best resources I have, like things like LinkedIn, to work out what their email addresses are. I'm writing emails to everyone. I call everyone I know that might be connected to someone on the board of a hospital somewhere. I have numbers in my phone that I'll never use again, and I don't know who I talk to, but I would literally just cold call people that people told me to, asking for help. And I guess that was a Friday. We talked on a Monday. I spent the weekend just sitting by the phone. It didn't ring. I think on the Tuesday, I finally talked to someone. I talked to them because I ended up writing to a geneticist email that responded, that was at the hospital, who said they could do a consult, and then they pushed it through. And then I somehow got in the following Thursday. But the following Thursday was, quote, the time of the termination deadline in California. I also want to just be clear, like, the word termination is like highly problematic. It's what they use, that term. I don't like the term, and that's a whole other conversation that I'm just using in the purposes of this conversation to understand.
Because otherwise it didn't fair, so there was a choice.
Yeah. And it was clearly something I didn't. I remember spending that weekend with my husband, and I was like, if there's something wrong with her hand, I couldn't give a shit. I'm going to do everything to make her. I was honestly like, well, my role as a mother is to make sure she has the best life possible.
Yeah.
And if she ever feels othered or different because of her disability, I'll do everything to make her feel the best she can possibly feel. I was literally like, who designs Beyonce's jewelry when she was wearing hand stuff so she can grow up with like the best jewelry on her special hand? How can I make a doll that grows with her that has that? And like, how can she always feel that she is unique and beautiful as she is? Because of course she's perfect. Of course she is. And that's honestly all I was kind of thinking. And I remember having these really heartfelt conversations with my husband that weekend, just about like the experiences we both had growing up and where we felt other because of things. My husband was a little heavier than a lot of people growing up, and he was like, even that made me feel alone as a child, and like, I just want to make sure my role is to be there. And like, that really felt like, that was what our duty is, and I was very clear on that. So anyway, we get into the doctor on Thursday. I wore a really pretty dress. I was still all about like appearance. Like, if I feel good on the outside, if I believe this is okay, then it is okay. All of that kind of stuff.
Thing, right? It's the only thing you can
control. Control nothing.
No, but at least you can control what you're wearing.
No,
and how
absolutely.
You're feeling at that point, right?
Yes.
Hoping.
And I wanted her, maybe this is something you understand. I'm sure this is something you understand that I'm still understanding, but I also think as a mother, you want your child to be proud of you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And like, so I wanted her to know that I was showing up the best way I knew how in the little things I did. The other thing we did is we played a lot of classical music because my husband went to university for music. He is a huge fan of classical music. And I guess now I know he had this like secret plan to teach her everything about music and use it against me. So they could like tease me, even though I think I know stuff. And so we played classical music in the car before we went to the appointment, and she kicked furiously. And I was like, that's a sign, like, it's all okay. And we went into that scan, and where I am lucky is my husband and I had a conversation beforehand that he brought up, because kind of he had the foresight to be like, something's going on here. And he just said, there are levels of acceptance of, with
what you can handle.
Yeah, what we can handle, what we deem the best life we can give her. And, how this appointment goes, we don't really know for sure. Like, it's clear how I felt it was going to go.
Yeah.
And it was clear that he was putting out there that, like, this may not be what we think it is. This could be so much more. And he had that kind of understanding that, we were on the same page. So, yeah, we went into that scan. We had a pre-scan with a nurse, and then the doctor came in. And I've done EMDR about this moment a lot, so I can talk about it. But we went in, and I just remember seeing that scan, and he pointed out anomaly after anomaly of, her body and how it was developing, her growth, and just really critical things that were happening that I don't know why they haven't been seen before. I still don't. I'll never know. I never got answers. But what I saw in that room, I don't think anyone should ever see. I say this, and to be clear, like, I kind of disassociate when I talk about this because that's what I've learned to do, and that's okay. But, I saw a lot of things in there that were just, it was crazy that the right foot that I saw that had a high arch, it was also because her foot was, half of it was missing, right? Like, it wasn't developing. And I didn't know, I don't have an art degree, but, like, I didn't know that what you see front on might not match what you see on the side. And you need to look at things properly to see them, like, I'm just going to, do you care if I grab this? Okay, whatever. I broke its head off.
No, it's like it's supposed to be like a bobbly head.
Right.
Thing. Yeah.
So, like, I'm looking at this, right? And I'm like, okay, cool, there's 4 legs. But, like, I could turn it and that could have something missing. But, like, if I'm not looking at it, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that, like, in scans, there's different ways of
It's
seeing
also not your job to know because you're a sponsor.
It's not. But, like, that's what I learned in that moment. And we saw a lot, and the doctor took it really slow, and he was very pragmatic and very steady. And my husband, I remember, was in the back of the room, wide-eyed. I was doing the thing, where I was just positive, being like, yeah, I see that. And my husband's like, babe, are you seeing this? And I'm like, yeah, I'm seeing it. But it's because it's like, I knew what was going on. And it was really fucking scary.
Yeah.
And I had no idea of what was to come. And he ended the scan and he looked at us, and, like, they can't necessarily recommend what to do, but they can indicate their perception of what's going on. And he was like, I'm really sorry. Then a woman appeared, I guess she was like a social worker for the hospital. And at that point, I guess I assumed, because I didn't know shit, that, like, we'd be moved into another room in the hospital and then, like, some sort of action would be taken.
Mm-hmm.
But we went into a room and they said to us, we're really sorry. As you know, today's the deadline. And we had thought because it was at the deadline,
they could do it then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're like, no, it's, like, so much more complicated than that. You're at the deadline. So what we can do is we can tell you about an unlisted clinic in California. And I don't mean to smile. It's just so wild to me still that, like, we live in, like, what I believe to be, like, this progressive democratic place.
Yeah.
And suddenly I'm being told in 2022 that, like, I need to look into an unlisted clinic for this 3-day procedure, even though they sign off and even this, they can't accommodate that there. And I, without saying it, we're like, is this because of, the state of affairs
mm-hmm.
in the country? And, they're like, yes, because the truth is in California, a hospital can sign off if they believe your life or their life is in threat, right? Yeah. But a lot of hospitals, I think they're so worried about, like, lawsuits and stuff like that, like, there's this apprehension.
Yeah.
So they gave us the name of this, like, unlisted clinic and the number, and said they'd do anything they could to support us in that. And she was lovely. I don't remember her name. I think that's a choice. And we went home and started calling that clinic. They told us they had a 10-day wait list. So I can only imagine what's happening in the rest of the country, that a clinic in LA, not just like California, has a 10-day wait list for people in my position. Like,
that is mind-boggling.
It's insane.
I honestly had no idea. I literally thought kind of like you, that you just go and it's insane.
So a 10-day wait list, but we could, if someone didn't show up, like, it's insane.
There's a wait list. It's like
there's a wait list. Like,
if someone cancels last minute, they can fit you in.
Yeah, there's a 5-figure deposit, to go through hell.
Wait, that doesn't. Oh, of course it's not covered.
It's not covered by insurance. Oh,
sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm like, of course not. Yeah.
I had so many questions. I wasn't in a question place, obviously. I was in a survival place. We were, quote, lucky enough that the hospital that was helping us did end up finding a hospital that agreed to see me for a second opinion. The irony that we got into that hospital on Labor Day will never cross my mind. We went to a hospital on Labor Day, a doctor that is my hero. She came in, she ran the department. She came in, the lights were off, she saw us, she turned the lights on for us on Labor Day. She told me that she was going to look agnostically at me, that she hadn't read any of the background because her job was really just to do what she deemed right, moral, legal, all of those things. And she went in and she started her ultrasound, and it was the same, if not worse. Like, this woman was incredible at what she did, and she just couldn't believe. I still, I have a relationship with her. And she'll still say, I don't know how this happened. Like, it's so perplexing and fucked up to her still.
Yeah.
And she's the head of a huge hospital. And she just was like, this is insane. And
there's so many elements.
I know. There was so many balls dropped. Yeah. And she actually said to me, the sad thing is a lot of the people that I see in this room have done IVF. And it's crazy that, a lot of the people, for different reasons, obviously, she does a lot of high risk pregnancies. I would send anyone to her now that was high risk and needed something checked, or just because send it to someone that, can do the job. But she was like, people come in here and these are wanted pregnancies. And
obviously you're doing IVF, you're paying all this money,
but there's just this perception. Anyway, so we saw her.
So that's the problem though. There is a perception that,
I know, I'll tell you,
when you say termination, there's a will and a want to do that. She
came in and she was the first person that hugged me. I remember that because no one hugged me before. These doctors were so, I get that they have to, bedside manner. I don't know what's right or what's wrong, but she told me it wasn't my fault. And I really thought it was my fault until that moment. And I still sometimes think it's my fault, which is so crazy. I know, but it's so hard not to think that. Sorry. And so she told me it wasn't my fault. She gave me her cell number. And she said, we're going to look after you. And I said, I just want to be snowed under. Like, I was scared before I got pregnant of giving birth. And then I found out in order to do this in the most humane way possible, it is to give birth. There's no word for birthing a child that isn't alive, which is something to say about the English language and our understanding of horror. But the process or the procedure to do it as safely as possible for everyone is to induce and to labor. And, your child is no longer alive, to be clear, but you're still inducing in labor. And that is just something that I was like, before I was pregnant, I was scared of just the process of giving birth. Yeah. And now suddenly I was faced with the fact that I was giving birth to a child that I would never hear. That is a really, 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 really fucked up thing that people shouldn't have to experience. And it happens every day. And it also doesn't just happen in my way. It also, people have stillbirths because, no one's checking and a heartbeat stops, or, an umbilical cord goes around the neck. And it's just, there's so many things that can happen. And it's so fucked up. Okay, so that's what she said. And then I went home. I'm blessed with beautiful parents, and they were actually coming anyway because they wanted going to help me build a nursery, and we had to tell them this devastating stuff, but they were at home waiting. And I came home and I was like, I don't know how to get through the next few days because I know that I have to say goodbye to my daughter, and I don't know how I did that, and I haven't done that. She's here. But I went, and I remember finding out I had to go in to begin the induction. Then I had to go back the next day to hospital. They would check me in. I would be induced. I would wait. I'd go into labor. And that's kind of the process. Again, didn't know anything about what to expect, didn't know anyone that had been through it. There's a few people that are like a little public that are influencers that I know had stillbirths. And I remember there was one person I DM'd, but, they didn't write back. And I was just desperate because I didn't know who could relate or talk to me. I didn't know what to do. I was like, how will I get through this? Like, I just was so scared.
Yeah.
One, and the care system. I mean, at least you have found this woman that was caring, but up to this point, no one had been caring.
Yeah, and that was like medical. It wasn't,
Yeah, mental.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I said to my husband is like, we need to go to therapy together today.
Yeah.
And that doctor actually did set us up with like a couple trauma therapists that's dealt with this. And we spoke to her for an hour, and she's like, you guys seem to communicate well. You're on the same page. And that was the first and last time we saw her. I went home. I remember looking at the stars that night. It was hot. It was balmy. And I just remember lying on a pillow outside looking at the stars. And I was like, this literally feels like some science fiction shit. And I am not a science fiction person, but I was like, there is life inside me that I have loved more than I've ever loved before, but I will never know them on this earth. And that is crazy. It's like the veil of life is so thin. It was like literally my lying, and we're never going to meet, but you are my best friend and I love you. And the stars are close to me. I can't explain it, but I was just trapped in my body, in the house, in a room. And also was like, I don't take prescription medicine, but I was like, why did I not get something to get through tonight? I don't know how I did it. Apparently we can get through anything. I went to the hospital. I have a beautiful friend called Caitlin. She also came to the hospital because I was like, I don't think my husband and I can handle this. Honestly, I do know there's certain doulas that can help with this stuff now. Again, I didn't have that information. I didn't think, there's also like stillbirth doulas and like there's people that can should be and people should know about it. I mean, to be honest, I interviewed doulas when I was pregnant and I was like, I don't think this is me. I don't really believe in a plan. I believe in whatever happens. I was pretty like open with that stuff. I knew that I wasn't in control. I never knew how much I wasn't in control. But there are. And my friend Caitlin came and she was great. Like the first night I was in labor, I believe for 2 nights in the hospital, 36 hours. It wasn't, I asked for them to just pump the drugs. Are you kidding? I didn't eat. I just had those going through me. I had the epidural from the moment I walked in the room, that pain, that needle, I'd seen needles way bigger. We ended up doing an amnio as well beforehand and all of that. And I delivered on the 9th of September, 2022. So 9922. I like that because I was born 92 or 29, depending what country you're in. So deep. And in ashwagandha, 9 is a very important number. And I was doing a lot of that work too.
Yeah. She was a Virgo.
I know, which honestly I'm not okay with because she was meant to be a Capricorn. I'm friends with so many Virgos and all my women are Virgos, and that week is actually the most common week to be born. And she was due at Christmas, which is my Christmas shit. But I was she went from the rarest week to be born to the most common. No offense, but Virgos you're around.
Yeah.
So anyway, I gave birth. I guess my oxy or whatever comes through then. I held her. I told her I loved her. I told her she was the greatest thing.
You were able to have a moment with her.
Yeah. And I didn't know beforehand that I would want to. But, because I was scared.
Yeah.
And also because she also, again, she's perfect, but she didn't look like maybe other babies look, right?
You also don't know how you're going to react to that if you've never been in that situation.
Yeah, I didn't either. But I was I want to hold her, and I talked to her, and, I did, and I'm so glad I did. I mean, she's perfect. And
you got to meet her.
Yeah.
She felt
I mean, she knew I loved her and that she was perfect. And, I told her we wanted to do the best thing for her and for her life. And everything that I could say, I said. I think that I chanted. I did, whatever I knew that I could do, I did. I do believe in science. So we did donate her body to science. Mm-hmm. I think that is a tremendous thing for her and for her legacy. Because I think in doing that, she's done more for everything than most people I know have that have lived very long lives.
Yeah.
And, that's her impact. And, she's fucking legend, She's so cool. And we ended up getting the amnio results back. She was missing a large chunk of her second chromosome that was never detected in the tests. I can't get into the ways I was gaslit around this and what I've learned about testing since, but
Can I ask?
things can be missed. I mean, it's complicated.
The whole premise of what you're sold when it comes to IVF is that it's an insurance policy. You're doing all this to prevent all of these things, especially if you're having kids in your 30s and 40s. Like, you know what I mean?
Here's what I'll say. I'm pro-science. I'm pro-medicine. So after I lost, her name's Henry. Or, you know, Henri. It's Henri. She was named after my grandma, Henriette. That's my middle name. They live together wherever they are in the universe. I believe that. I wear this bracelet now that it has her name on it and her date of birth, but it's connected to my grandma's bracelet.
Oh, that's amazing.
So, like, they live together. I wear the original Henriette's clock from Holland every day. But deeply connected. I feel her. We're all family. So her full name is Henriette Baldy-Hellman, but Henri for short. I just wanted to stop by saying that. But the way genetics work, chromosomal testing, specifically PGT testing. First of all, my husband and I are both Ashkenazi Jewish, right? So there is testing that they advise you do when you're two Ashkenazis because we both are carriers of things. That's like pretty general. OBs are going to send you to do that. We weren't matching on either issues, so that was okay. Then you go into PGT testing and they say like that checks like, you know, the 23 chromosomes. First of all, I didn't understand genetics before this at all. I still don't. So like this is my layman's, but it's like there's 23 chromosomes and they look at them when they're doing PGT testing. It skims the surface, right? Like when you get an embryo and you take a sample of that embryo that is so tiny and you test it, it is a superficial testing. There's a thing called PGT-A testing. That's a little different. If you and I both know that we're carriers of like the BRCA gene, for example, you can go in and test for that. That's very specific. But if you don't know what you're testing for because you're not carriers of it, it is a needle in like the biggest haystack you've ever seen. So the way a genetic expert explained it to me that I found really helpful is like, when you get the house checked to get it approved, so you're checking like the floorboards and shit. So you go in and you check the floorboards, you check the lighting, and you just like, it's, you know, that's what you see. And then someone says, okay, great, you can buy it. And we all know when people rent houses, buy houses, there's problems afterwards, right? They're like, oops, the water doesn't work, we didn't catch that. But you don't go in and like lift the floorboards and get, you know, the soil tested and the, you know, the guts tested for things. That's kind of what genetic testing is, right? You're just looking at the superficial level of things and something can seem perfect and then you lift it up and it's like fucking, there's a lot going on. So that's one example. And then if you get even more specific, the way a library system works, you have A to Z. Those are your 23 chromosomes. But then you have, you're looking up, you know, an author Alain and you look up AL, right? So then you're breaking it down to like chromosome 1, which is AL. Then you're opening the book that is like AL 1.22 and you're looking at the chapters. Those are the individual numbers within that. And then in the chapters, you're opening the actual words and you notice words are missing. That is true chromosomal testing. That is going like as deep as you can to find an answer. Now, that is what an amniocentesis does. It's looking at everything. PGT testing is not. I am not an expert and I hate when people turn up and are like, I know this and I'm an expert. I'm not. This is my understanding of how things can be missed. And when you're doing the 23 chromosomes, you're looking at like holistically, what does it look like? But there's noise in these testings. These testings aren't perfect. So if you actually look at it, it almost looks like a heartbeat. It kind of goes up and down through all the chromosomes. And if it goes too high, they're like, there's an addition to that chromosome. If it goes too low, you're missing something. But if you ask to look at it, which most people don't, it kind of looks like this. It's kind of overwhelming. And there's no quote noise, which is high and low in all of them. So they just make general predictions based on that, unless there's something very significant. Now, most of the time, these issues can self-correct. They show that if you are actually missing less than 0.02 chromosomes, that is going to self-correct. So that's when you have embryos that are like mosaic. Right? So that's kind of how that works. But where things can be missed, and it's why a lot of people that do IVF will do a transfer, it doesn't work. They test the body, they say there's nothing with your body, it must have been an embryo, and someone says, but the embryo was tested. Sure, but like there was probably something there that they didn't pick up on. And like, that's the explanation. But you can't go in and test it afterwards, right?
Yeah.
You can test contents, but you can't test the embryo. I think there's a study happening somewhere in East LA. I saw it in the New York Times. It was really interesting, but you can't really test on that. And also, obviously, there's this like moral thing about like once an embryo passes a certain day, you shouldn't be testing it either, right? Like,
yeah.
So that's kind of PGT testing. So with me, what happened is I went in and I found out, okay, this many mega bases is what it's called, are missing of my second chromosome. How did you miss that? And then they say, well, because the truth is things go high and things go low. We have to make a conservative mark where we can. And also things are missed because it's until we go into what's called high-res testing.
Yeah, which we were not
doing. And that's not PGTA. High-res is like you're looking for something specific.
That's when usually if your husband and you have something in common, but that's when they would do it even.
Yeah, it's like there's no real, because that's so. But the PGT, it's called high-res PGT too, so it's not even the PGTA. When you go into that, it is so imperfect. They choose not to do it because what happens under that is you see everything. So suddenly I asked to see, all the embryos I had under that. And, what they showed me is everything goes up and down. So they're like, well, if you do that, you can discredit all of them. But like, then you're just living in fear that everything has issues. There's no way of knowing, right? So under the high res, we saw Henry did have the missing, but under the quote low res, the noise wasn't there. It didn't show up. And that's how you can explain it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
And I think that just the easiest way to explain it is the unexplained part of like people that have failed transfers.
Yeah.
And, we can go and test for, and I've done endo is a whole other conversation, but like the endos, scarring, all of that can affect things. There's ERA testing, which is, your time testing of what's optimal, but there's no testing of the embryos to the level that I think we think exists, to the point where there's certain countries, like in Australia, where they don't sell it to you unless you're a carrier or there's a significant reason to do it. I know the New England Journal, which is a very important medical document, and I, after I lost Henry, I started doing a lot of research to try and understand what had happened.
Yeah. And
there's a research paper that they published that was, unless you have known issues or have had mostly known issues or multiple losses, which is an indication that there could be something else going on. But if you otherwise don't have those things, your odds of live birth in IVF are the same whether you're testing or not testing. That's in a medical journal. I think that that's obviously different. If you have multiple losses, there's a reason to maybe look into that. There's reasons for everything, but I didn't have those.
Yeah.
I'm not saying obviously her issues would or wouldn't have existed with or without the testing, of course. All I'm saying is looking at the testing as this insurance policy, it's not it.
Yeah, you just need to realign your expectations to when you're doing this, I feel.
Yeah, and I think there's just so much fear, and of course there is. We all want a child. We're doing it. So we're going to optimize how we do that, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
But there's a reason now that for me the testing isn't the be-all and the end-all. It's testing during pregnancy too.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, up to this point, I would have literally just thought, if I'm doing IVF and I'm even thinking about having one more and I will do IVF, and then the doctor, my OBGYN told me you would need to do it through IVF, and the reason is because of your age. I'm 42. It's just too high risk, and then that way you make sure. But it's not making sure. Though.
Say at 42. There is a case for testing because we know the quality,
It's not great.
But it also depends. At the end of the day, I have a friend that did 6 rounds of retrievals. And every time she took her embryos for testing, they said there was something wrong, right?
Yeah.
And then on her 6th round, she got 2. This is obviously anecdotal. On her 6th round, she got 2. She talked to, she consulted with someone she was very close to that was in the medical profession. She talked to her doctor. She put 2 in. And she has 2 beautiful twins, and they weren't tested. And I think that, at the end of the day, that's a choice. And everyone should be able to make that choice for themselves. There's also some studies, and they can't prove it, which is that some people's embryos are very fragile. And the second you take a biopsy and test them, it can affect the quality, and that can affect implantation. Yeah. I'm not a doctor. I'm just someone that's been through a lot and have to look at everything holistically.
Yeah.
I think that if you're someone that's only getting 2 embryos, Maybe you don't want to test them because you're like, I don't want to do another retrieval and I don't want to lose them both. And I don't want to know too much and I'm scared to put them in. If you're someone that has a lot, do it. If you're someone of a certain age, there's so many reasons, but like, get a second opinion, like talk to someone about it, because I just think these doctors now, and I love my IVF doctor right now, but like, I still have one. But they have so many people coming through their doors. It's so hard to get personal attention. It's so hard to find someone that's going to advocate for you. Don't be afraid to take up space. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I don't give a shit anymore. I ask, and yes, they're going to rush you. I have met so many nurses and like, God bless them, but I'm sorry, like at this point, like I'm running circles around them with the information because like you're a number.
Yeah.
Most of these companies have been bought by, hedge funds. They have so much money going into them. And unfortunately, like that's how it works. It's really sad.
It really is a business and it's treated like a business.
I just found out vasectomies are covered by insurance for the most part. And I was just like, of course they are.
But IVF is not.
Yeah.
God forbid.
You know what I mean? Like, I know they're different things. I'm just saying, like, come on. Like, this shit is crazy.
I think we're just gonna probably have like a two-part thing.
Yeah, I don't smoke, but I need a cigarette break. No, I'm not gonna have
one. You want one?
No, I don't. No, I can't smoke. No, I quit smoking.
Oh my God.
But I always, I'm like, this is when I would have one.
Like, I never smoked, so I'm like,
I got hypnotized, it worked.
No, really?
Yeah.
I've never tried. I should have done that for
great.
sugar.
Yes, I thought about going for sugar. And
my
like, just tell me it's bad for me enough times.
Yeah, that I believe it.
That's what they did. That was really about like understanding that you're hurting yourself with smoking and that's why you have to quit. I loved smoking. Anyway, that's a different conversation.
That's a different conversation, but apparently I need to like try this for sugar.
Yeah, for sure.
And for when I need to like leave Mounjaro and I don't know what to do because I'm a sugar addict. But that's a different conversation.
Plus son OCD for me.
We're not trying to bring it down. I think it really is about like having clear expectations so you go with knowledge that you didn't have. I mean, I tried and I had a different experience that also wasn't great, but I think that's why your story resonated so much, because I feel like I wish I would have known more than what I did, and I didn't know. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right?
You don't know, and I think that's
your
why
soul is marketing story. Exactly.
Yeah, and there's so many things in the media, and like, and here's the thing: I have so many friends that have the most beautiful children that we can see through IVF.
Yeah,
I don't have many friends with bad stories from IVF. I mean, I think I have bad experiences in certain clinics, and that feels global.
Yeah,
but like, I have so many friends. I mean, they have beautiful children and they have beautiful experiences, and I think it is wonderful. And I think that if that's what you need to conceive, if that's your journey,
but at least go into it knowingly.
Yeah,
go into it having the tools to like know what to expect to whatever
also
degree you
know
can.
that it's a money making business. Yeah. Like, it doesn't mean your doctor doesn't care about you, but there's like overheads and stuff. It is a business. Baby making has always been a business.
Yeah. Even if it goes, that's what the one thing I really found shocking that I did not know. Like, I got pregnant my first baby, like very naturally, like whatever. And it was very rude awakening to know that the system wasn't there for me to like give birth to my child, and it wasn't supposed to be a magical experience, but it was supposed to be like get in, get out, move on.
Oh
like,
my God.
I did not know that, right? Like, I didn't from South America, so the doctors hug you, they give you their phone numbers. That is a normal way of interacting. Like,
yeah, and I also would say on the other side, what's hard is there are some doctors out there, and they offer that experience, a concierge experience where they're giving you their numbers, but those doctors are charging women $20,000 a year, and I also think that's exploitation. Yeah. So you have someone that's scared, so you can charge them to like care about them, and like that's hard too. Like, also
their job is to take care of you. Like, that is their job.
I certainly have to. I can't afford that. All of that.
But neither should you have to, though. Like, it is like they make whatever that promise. I forget what it is to like take care of their patients, right? And that's what you're supposed to do. You don't need a $20,000 bonus to take care of your patient.
I mean, I'm sure there's problems on the back end with insurance and all this stuff. Not IVF, but the OBs. But like, I mean, I didn't mention this. The high-risk doctor never called me. My OB never called me either, right? Like, when everything happened, I remember I called her the night we found out something could be really bad. And I said, they said this thing about termination. I'm freaking out. And she said, I've never seen that. Don't worry, it won't happen. And if it does need to happen, I've got your back. Never spoke to her ever again. Called her on the Friday before the Labor Day, right?
Yeah. When you found,
called her office so many times. Husband finally got through, said to the person on the front desk, we are in a crisis situation. We need to be connected to the doctor. And they said, she's not on call. We can't connect you. You have to call back on Tuesday after the public holiday. Swear to God. We never spoke to them again. And the reason I started Cycle Interrupted, which is my Substack, where I shared this, is because I went to Yelp, which is crazy. Why do you need to go to Yelp to find bad reviews of someone because you've gaslighting your experience kind of thing?
I'm also that person. I go to Google. I am that person.
So I went to Yelp after everything later in my like research and discovery phase. And there was someone in there that had commented about the same OB and that they were they had an ectopic pregnancy. They were ignored when they said they were in pain. They were ignored, told that it was normal, ended up in hospital, ended up rupturing a tube, wrote about it on Yelp. I didn't know you could DM people on Yelp, that I did.
Oh, I didn't know.
I told her my name, said to look me up, and then I promised I was normal.
Yeah.
So like you stalked me, I stalked her. And we actually have mutual friends. We ended up meeting, and that's who I started Cycle Interrupted with. And she ended up in the IVF system after this and has her own stuff that she will share about at some point. But like the fact that we are two educated, what we feel as smart women that are privileged, right? And we're both in this position where we're asking Yelp about a doctor because our experience was both that we were really abandoned. We're two people.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how many things happen to people.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's what it's so scary because
it's insane.
Again, the fact that you have to go to a public forum like that to even find anything is just mind-boggling. And we live not only in the US, we live in California. Not only in California, we live in LA. We live in like privileged parts of LA. Like this shouldn't happen to.
I have like the best insurance.
Yeah.
I thought that I was in a really good position. I was on a wait list to see my OB. You know what I mean? Like, highly regarded.
It's also just so crazy too. Was your OBGYN like a man or a woman?
A woman.
Hurts more.
Yeah, they were all women.
Hurts.
They were all women, and I did that consciously. And now there's something to say about experience, and that was one thing. I looked at some credentials, and I'm sure some new doctors are amazing, but I honestly think that she had an experience what I was going through before and didn't know how to handle it maybe. And there's something about people that have that tenor that like know maybe, you know, like you learn from experience.
Yeah.
Which is
sadly
why I'm here.
Yeah. Well, the story doesn't end here. But I feel like we're gonna have to do a second part to this. So stay tuned. I'm gonna release the next part of this interview in a couple days.
Just getting comfy.
Please keep getting comfy because the story it's insane. Like just when you think it can get more turns, it really does. So stay tuned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It really means a lot that you're taking the time and that you're being so brave to even tell the story because I know it cannot be easy to release something like this. But I think that you're going to be helping so many people,
so.
and you are already. And it really continues the legacy that your daughter left. She must be so proud of you. She really must be so proud.
I really hope she is.
I know she is.
We're all in survival trying. Well, you know what's a sign though? This is crazy, but up there you have a green bird.
Yeah.
And one of my symbols for her is green birds. I have these green parrots that appear on special days, always overhead, I swear. The signs are everywhere. They're always there.